What is up, everybody? Cliff Ravenscraft here, and I am going to I'm going to attempt to speak softly here as it's currently 7:41 in the morning in my hotel room, and just behind the camera that I'm looking into now is a wall, and on the other side of that wall is another hotel room. And I don't want to wake anybody up, but I just wrapped up my Thrive Summit 2019 experience. I had the great honor and privilege of speaking at this event put on by my great friend, Jevonnah Ellison, Lady J. If you guys have heard of Jevonnah Ellison, you know she is an amazing woman. I will never forget the first time I met her face to face. It was January 2016 at a Coaching with Excellence event that Dan Miller, our mutual friend, hosted in his hometown of Franklin, Tennessee. And I'll just, I had the opportunity of speaking at that event. I had the opportunity of listening to all the other people that presented at Dan's event. But there was something special about Jevonnah Ellison. And by the way, you may notice that you've heard me talk about Jevonnah before. And it's like, wait a second, where's Cliff coming off of calling her Jevonnah? Everybody calls her Jevonnah, or they call her Lady J. And the reason for that is, by the way, just a little sidekick here, is I got to meet Jevonnah's mom. And as I talked with her, she's like, just so you know, her name is Jevonnah. And I'm like, you know what? I never knew that. She's never told me that that's how her name is. She goes, she wouldn't tell you. But that's it. She goes, I named her. And her name is Jevonnah. And I made her mama a promise. I would never say Jevonnah again, except to explain maybe. But Jevonnah Ellison. And so I'll never forget in Franklin, Tennessee, the way she showed up. So okay, there's a couple of different things that come to mind when I think about Jevonnah Ellison, and they are the things that I noticed immediately upon meeting her for the very first time. And this event here in Montgomery, Alabama, they're the same exact qualities that I see in her today. That what drew me to her, magnetically drew me to her as a person. And I decided to write them down. I'm looking over at my notes. I wrote down there are how many of those? One, two, three, four, five. Five E's. Five E words that I believe describe what makes Jevonnah so amazing. So first of all, the first word that comes to my mind when I think about Jevonnah is elegance. And when I say elegance, I'm talking about elegance in just extravagant. What's the word I'm looking for? It just display of quality. When the way that she dresses is elegant, the way that she creates materials for the handouts that she's going to give. You know, so many people, like myself even sometimes, I might be tempted to just type out an outline, print it up, and hand it out to an audience. Not Jevonnah. Jevonnah in 2016 comes with this full color, full bleed, professionally designed, outline of all the materials that she handed out at this event. And it spoke of first of all, it was just elegant looking. Everything I've ever seen Jevonnah do. Just go to Jevonnah.com, I believe it is. Anyway, or just do a search for Jevonnah Ellison in Google and find her website and look at just the branding images, the branding materials. Look at any of the stuff that she does to that where she's advertising or promoting anything. All of her marketing materials, there's one word that will describe them, and it is elegance. Elegance. It's not like, hey, look, I'm so super fancy. It's beautiful. Everything that I've ever seen Jevonnah do has a sense of beauty. And I can tell that this is like a core value for her because she believes in elegance, that God has created this world to be elegant and beautiful. And what I've noticed from just knowing Jevonnah as a friend for the last several years is that she's making me realize beauty around me that I've never seen before, or at least that I wouldn't have paid as much attention to. So, Jevonnah, if you're watching this, thank you so much for always drawing my attention to elegance. All right. The next E word that I think that describes Jevonnah from the very first time I met her is excellence. All right. There's a difference between elegance and excellence. You can have elegance without excellence. All right. You can actually have excellence without elegance. I believe that I've been guilty of that many times. But when I say excellence, I mean she's intentional about what she does. She doesn't just throw things together. She plans, she prepares. Now, notice I'm not saying that she's perfectionist. None of us do anything perfect. And we all know that done is better than perfect, all right? Because, yeah, you get the idea. But what I will tell you is that if she is given the time to put something together, she's not going to waste her time doing frivolous things. If she has the opportunity to do things well, she's going to do them well. And she's going to do it with excellence. She's going to commit herself to presenting whatever it is that she's presenting, whether that be a handout at a speaking event at Coaching with Excellence in 2016, or whether it be putting on an event, or whether it be just a special surprise birthday party for her mama, which I had the awesome privilege of being invited to. Oh my gosh, excellence, elegance to the hilt. Anyway, so yes, she does everything that I've ever seen Jevonnah done. She brings a level of excellence and elegance. There's a third E word that describes Jevonnah: energy. She is full of life. And when I'm around her, I feel that energy. It gets transferred to me, as my friend Leslie would say, the law of thermodynamics. Thank you, Leslie, for that, by the way. Leslie Samuel, becomeablogger.com. Anyway, Jevonnah is full of energy. I watched her. I had the opportunity to see her behind the scenes of this Thrive Summit. I showed up the day before for the tech run through. I was there a couple hours early because that's who I am. I like to show up early and be prepared. And I just got to witness all that she was doing, all the running around that needed to be done, and all of the ways that she showed up for people and that she invested in the lives of each person that she had in front of her at any moment in time. And she brought so much energy. And I can tell you, I do these events. I know exactly how it feels at the end of the day. And there are times when, I saw this like, man, it's like, this is a long day. And she comes back to the green room and she sits down. But when it was, after a few moments and it's time for her to go on, she brought energy. She created energy within her. I happen to know where that energy came from, and that may come up in my fifth E word that I talk about here in just a moment. But Jevonnah is just always an example of how you can bring energy to what you do. If you're going to do something, do it with all that you are. It reminds me of this scripture verse that, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, strength, everything you got. And that requires energy. And Jevonnah is she's an example for me in the area of energy. The other one is encouragement. So this is the fourth E word. Here's the thing. The weird thing is I wanted to make sure that I didn't get in Jevonnah's way. I didn't want to take up too much of her time. I was there to support her and her event, to make her event a success. But the number of times with all of the people that she had that come to this event, the number of the times that she went out of her way to come and encourage me. And this has just been the case over all of the years that I've known her now. She is an encourager. And I love that about her. And the thing is I know I'm not the only one who felt her encouragement, who felt her attention directed at them. I know that everyone, when they were in front of her, they felt that she was fully present and right there with them. And I know that they walked away with a feeling of encouragement in their own heart. They walked away with more hope, more sense of, I matter, I'm important, there is work for me to do. And she does that so excellently, with excellence, and full of energy. She is an encourager. And then the fifth E word that I came up with, and it's actually two words because faith, by the way, just does not come with an E. So I wrote down enthusiastic faith. Enthusiastic faith is the fifth characteristic of Jevonnah Ellison that I want to talk about today. You know, I have some friends, well, I have lots of friends who are very faith focused, faith centered. I happen to be one of those people myself. I happen to be a Jesus follower myself. I happen to be a believer in God. And, I just try to never beat people over the head with that or anything. And I have some friends that, quite frankly, they feel like they have to wear a Jesus Saved t-shirt every day, and they need to introduce God into every single conversation. And sometimes it's done in a rather awkward way. It's kind of like a used car salesman. Like the bad stare. Not that there's anything. By the way, if you happen to be a used car salesman, I'm sorry. You guys get such a bad rap. I'm sure there's so many amazing used car sales, but the stereotypical used sales car. They're just like in your face. Well, let me do this. They'll do anything to convince you. They'll do anything to drop God into every conversation and try to make you think exactly the way they think about God, And Jevonnah is so full of faith, but it doesn't come off that way. It comes off as enthusiastic. You can tell that her elegance, her excellence, her energy, her encouragement, all of those other qualities that make it comes from and is derived from her faith, and it comes out enthusiastically. When I think about sales, I have several different definitions of sales that empower me to sell effectively. I love to sell. One of my favorite definitions is shared enthusiasm. It reminds me of 1 Peter 3:15. It says, listen, you need to always be prepared to give a reason for the hope that you have. But when asked, do so with gentleness and respect. You see, now the thing is Jevonnah, at times I would describe her sharing of the source as bold and confident. But at the same time, it's always done with gentleness and respect. It's always, and that's weird. Sometimes you might think that that's an oxymoron. How can you share your faith boldly, but with gentleness? And Jevonnah does that through her enthusiastic faith that just shows up in everything she does. So, yeah, I all of this I recognized from Jevonnah when I first met her for the very first time. It's one of the reasons why I knew when I did my very first Free the Dream conference in 2018 that Jevonnah had to speak at my event. She was the exemplary person that I had in mind for coming to speak at my event. I knew that when she took the stage, she would bring all of these qualities to the event, and she did last year. And she rocked the house at Free the Dream 2018. For those of you who were there or who have seen the online course version of Free the Dream from last year, you know what I'm talking about. And I'm so honored that Jevonnah is coming back again to Free the Dream, which is 40 days from right now. I'm recording this on Saturday, August 3rd, 7:54 a.m. in Montgomery, Alabama. My first time in Montgomery, Alabama, and it has been such an amazing experience. But in 40 days from now, Jevonnah is going to be traveling from Montgomery, Alabama, back to Franklin, Tennessee to give a talk. And I'm not quite sure exactly which talk she's giving at Free the Dream this year, but I want to share with you just a little bit of notes that I took from Jevonnah's talk here when she opened up the Thrive Summit 2019. She told a story about as a little girl, she was riding her bicycle through an affluent neighborhood, one where as she was riding through, she was afraid that people would probably see that she was there, know that she didn't belong, and she just felt out of place. Very affluent neighborhood. And as she was riding her bike, she's kind of just praying to God as just talking to God as she's riding her bike through this neighborhood. And she's like, God, I don't belong here. And then she said that she felt I don't know if she heard God's voice audibly or not. I hear God tell me things every now and then. I've never heard his voice audibly. Maybe Jevonnah has. I don't know. Ask her. But what I will tell you is that she said, I heard God tell me, go turn down this street. Turn down this street. And she did. She turned down that street and she came across a little girl named Maddie. And Maddie was sitting in front of a house that was elegant, beautiful. And she said that later she had a dream. And she talked about the fact that, well, you know what? I'll tell you what. I'm going to ask Jevonnah to tell you the rest of that story. Because I think if you hear it outside of the context of the Thrive Summit, I think that it may come off the wrong way. So what I'm going to encourage you to do is I encourage you to go to Thrive. Just go to Thrive Conference 2020. I think it's going to be July 31st and August 1st next year. The only thing is I know that Free the Dream Conference, it's happening around the same time. You'll obviously want to come to Free the Dream if it's on the same weekend, but I'm going to try to make sure that doesn't happen. I still haven't completely locked in the dates for Free the Dream 2020, and I'm going to do my best to make sure that I can find dates that do not overlap with that. Man, it's a problem when you got so many friends that have all of these events. I've got to work around Ray Edwards' event, Pat Flynn event. I've got to work around potentially going to Prague in 2020 and speaking to world leaders. I mean, this is insane. It's like, wow. And there's only 2 months that I really want to host Free the Dream 2020 right now, June and July. When does this happen? How does this work out? I don't know. Anyway, we'll get it all worked out somehow. But go to the Thrive Conference and ask Jevonnah to tell that story at that event. I'm sure she will. It was, I'll tell you what I can tell you is the notes that I took away from the story. When you hear God's voice, you have to obey. Just know that. Big things happen, all right? When you hear the voice of God, and I'm not saying the audible voice, but you hear that nudge inside. I feel called to do something. I feel like I should do something. And that nagging feeling of what you want, what you desire. It may seem selfish. It may seem overly extravagant. Who do I think I am? I'm not worthy of this. But when you hear something inside of you saying, man, I think this is supposed to be a part of your life, listen to that voice. You've got to obey. That's one thing that I wrote down in my notes. The other one is you've got to believe bigger. You've got to believe bigger. The thing is God has so many things for us that he would love for us to experience. In, what is it? 1 Timothy 6, 17 and 18, I think. It says something, I'm trying to remember this. Paul is writing to Timothy. He says, listen, command those who are rich or who are wealthy to not put their hope in their wealth, which is so uncertain. All right? Now, notice that he's not commanding the rich to get rid of all their worldly possessions. That is not. Instead, he says, tell them to be generous with what they have. Okay? And to put their hope in God. Make sure that their hope is not in the financial or the wealth, all of the different things that they own. Command them to be generous and to put their hope instead in God. And now get this. The thing is, we get command those to be rich, to be generous, blah, blah, blah. I want you to hear this. Command those who are wealthy to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. God and the thing is there's so many bigger things in life. And yes, wealth. There is more out there, all of this stuff, for our enjoyment. And so many times we say, well, that we just can't want these things. We shouldn't go after these things. I can't pursue that. That's selfish. That's this, that's that. And we've been taught not to dream big dreams. But I will tell you, there's a reason for that. And if you want to learn that, come to Free the Dream Conference in 40 days from today. I will teach you why we've been conditioned to stop dreaming bigger. But I tell you what, you've got to believe bigger. That is exactly one big, huge phrase. I wrote it down in bold print inside of my notes from Jevonnah's opening talk. And she says, let me tell you something. You've got to believe bigger. And when you hear the instructions of what to do, where to go, what to focus on, where to invest your time, effort, and energy, that thing you feel most called to do, you've got to say yes. That's it. You've got to say yes. Many of you have been following my journey for so many years, and you know the times when I had the career in insurance that was secure, that was guaranteed, that was more job security than anyone could ever dream for. But I had this dream, this vision of leaving that and doing podcasting full time. What's that all about? But I said yes. It wasn't easy, but I said yes. And then I got to the place where eventually God began to bless that yes in ways that I never dreamed possible. He got through my head with so many limiting beliefs and helped me eliminate those and step into more and more of what he had me actually believe bigger. And every time I've believed bigger, and he says, okay, you believe bigger? Yep. Then do this. And I'm like, ooh. And then it took me a while, but finally I came around to saying yes. And then September of 2 years ago, I decided to take my $500,000 a year podcast coaching and consulting business. And I'm like, man, what would it be like if I just stepped out and do what really I was put on this earth to do? What if I gave up 100% of every stream of income that I have and pursue what I know God put me on this planet to do? What would happen if I said yes? Well, I did. And this is what happens, and I learned this from Jevonnah at her Thrive Summit. When you say yes, get this, your experience shifts. Yes, Y-E-S, your experience shifts. Jevonnah, thank you so much for that reminder. And thank you for giving me that just little bit of clarity about, yeah, every single time I've said yes, my experience in this life has shifted. Every single time I've said yes. Even the bigger stuff that I had to believe. The Thrive Summit was amazing on so many levels. Let me tell you, I have never felt more welcomed than I have in this small community in Montgomery, Alabama of dreamers. It was incredible. You know, I'm going to say something, and I'm just going to say it because I am who I am. I'm going to share my experience, but you know, I'm a white man. You know this. I didn't need to tell you that, but I had some experiences when I was a kid. I grew up. I was born in Northern Kentucky, lived several years in Northern Kentucky. But then when my mom married my stepdad, who is now my dad, by the way, I was adopted a couple years ago as a 40-some-odd-year-old man. I was adopted by my dad. So my dad and my mom got married, and when we got married, we lived in this area called Clifton, Ohio, which is a suburb of Cincinnati. And this is back in the 70s, okay? And Cincinnati is not well known for its race relations between the white community and the black community. And the interesting thing is that my mom and dad put me in this public school. And in this public school, I was one of 3 white kids in the school. And to say that I stood out like a sore thumb would be an understatement. And things did not go well for me in that experience. They didn't. I felt alone. I felt like an outsider, and things of that nature. Now the thing is my mom and dad. Thankfully, I've never grown up with prejudice in my life or anything of that nature. But I never felt comfortable or welcomed by that community of people in my life. I always seemed like an outcast, and I don't think that's any one person's fault. I mean, there's a lot of things that were going on culturally at the time, and as a result of that, thankfully I never took it personally, but I just never felt connected to that community of people. And so after about after 2 years, I went to the first grade in this I did kindergarten and first grade in this public school, and after the first grade, they basically what they did is in first grade, I was put into the back of the classroom and I was ignored. I was never engaged as a student, and I'm slightly embarrassed to tell you this, but at the end of the first grade, I didn't know how to spell my first name. I didn't. If you asked me to put my name on the top of a paper at the end of first grade, I didn't know. I couldn't put Cliff on the top of it. It's ridiculous, I know, but there was obviously some things that were not being taught to me in this environment. So my mom and dad took me out of that, and they put me into a Catholic school. That's a whole nother story for another time. And by the way, I'm not Catholic, and I was one of the very few people in that school that was non-Catholic. And I was in Catholic school from, by the way, my mom and dad held me back, put me in Catholic school. I think it was predominantly white Catholic school. And the thing is that it was crazy. It's been a weird background. But then after my second time through the first grade, moving forward, got and started to receive some good education. But the thing is then we moved to Northern Kentucky. And in Northern Kentucky, I lived most my entire life without knowing anyone other than other people of my background, my color, whatever you want to call it. Now, the thing is throughout my childhood and growing up, I've known a couple people here and there, and thankfully I've had one or two friends throughout my lifetime at all times that were I guess you would say black or whatever. I don't even know how to even say that. You can tell that it's even awkward for me to say this, but I've never really saw these people as different, except that it's just that's not my world. And so there have been times where I've gone to places where obviously I'm in a community where it's predominantly black folks that are there, and I've always felt awkward. I've always felt a little out of place. I've never felt that one-on-one with people, but in a community where I walk in. And so here's what I will tell you. I was invited to Jevonnah Ellison's Thrive Summit, and I walk in. And by the way, I have a very eclectic faith background as well. So when I was a kid, I went to Nazarene churches, I went to Wesleyan churches, Baptist churches, Pentecostal churches, Assembly of God churches, and all this other stuff. But the only thing I've ever witnessed before is maybe television and movie depictions, and maybe a little bit of video clips here and there of like an African American black gospel community church experience. All right. And I guess stereotypically, I've always envisioned these things where Sunday morning, it's not like 45 minutes programmed this or that. It's just like 3.5 hours of people just praising Jesus in a way that that I've only ever witnessed in a Pentecostal church, but with a different flair. That's what I would say. And I came to Montgomery, Alabama, not knowing what to expect, except to know that Jevonnah's amazing, and everything she does is done with excellence, elegance, energy, encouragement, and with enthusiastic faith. And I certainly experienced all of that. But what I did experience at this event, I would say, if I had to guess, of all the people there, I would say that at least 90% of those in attendance you would describe them as a black community. And I will tell you, I felt awkward at first. And I say at first. I'm talking like the first 15 minutes. But I felt God say, listen, Cliff, you've just got to be you. You have to be you. Authentically be yourself and smile. And you cannot see these people as any different than all of the people you spoke to in Franklin, Tennessee last week at Ray Edwards' Copywriting Academy event. You cannot allow the color of anyone's skin to say, these people are my children just like you are my child. And that's what God spoke to me. And I got to tell you, it took me about 10, 15 minutes to have the courage to go up to somebody of a different skin color of mine. I'm just being authentic with you. And it was weird for me. It was weird for me. But man, I got to tell you, it's hard to leave Montgomery, Alabama. Some of the people that I spent the past 2 days with, I've never felt more connected with, more welcomed by. I felt I felt a part of a family. And the weird thing was that so many of these people weren't like, I mean, yes, there were, I mean, Jevonnah's husband is a pastor of one of those churches that in my mind, I still probably have a really weird understanding in my own head of what their church must be like on a Sunday. I'd like to visit it sometime. But the thing is, though, is yeah, there were, I don't know, maybe 20 people, maybe 25 people, I don't know, more, I don't know, from her church that were there. And so certainly there was that family community. But there was this entire group of people, I think maybe 7, 8, 10 women who traveled all the way from Virginia. And then there were people from all over, all these other places, California, Florida, and all over. But you know what? What was weird is it felt like we all were family. Like we all knew each other by the end of half the day through the first day, or at least certainly by the end of the first day. But the second day, it's like we all knew each other. It's like it's like the second day seemed like a family reunion, but not one of those family reunions that you're not looking forward to going to. It's one of those ones where it's like, man, I'm so glad to be in your presence. And then I was invited to Jevonnah Ellison's her mama's 70th birthday celebration. And I did not feel out of place at all. I did not feel it was the most incredible experience. And I got to tell you, I hope that Free the Dream does not, I hope and I'm praying that I can find a way so that I can potentially go to Prague next year. That I'm hoping that I can work that out, which is supposed to happen sometime in June and July. I'm hoping that I can find a date so that Free the Dream 2020 does not conflict with Thrive Summit. And Jevonnah, if I can work it out to where all of this aligns perfectly, and I'm going to do everything within my power to make it work, I don't care if I'm invited to speak at the Thrive event next year or not. I want to come back and experience Thrive Conference 2020. The past 2 days here in Montgomery, Alabama, have had, well, you know what? Saying yes to come here, my experience has shifted. Thank you, Jevonnah Ellison, and thank you all for watching. Guys, if you haven't followed Jevonnah before, you've got to check out her podcast. You've got to just go to her website and just learn more about Jevonnah Ellison. Your life, your experience will shift as well. Thank you so much. I'm going to get out of here. I've got to pack up everything in this hotel. I'm heading out. I'm heading back on my journey back to the Northern Kentucky area, but there's a part of Montgomery, Alabama that's coming with me. So I'm excited. Thank you so much for letting me share my heart with you today. Talk to you soon.